The list of House Democrats who are publicly undecided on impeachment is shrinking. This morning, Elissa Slotin of Michigan published a newspaper op-ed explaining her decision to vote yes on both articles. And last hour, at a contentious town hall in Rochester, Michigan, she explained it.
The thing that was different for me is this very, very basic idea that the President of the United States would reach out to a foreign power and ask for an investigation for personal political gain. While we may not agree, I hope you believe me when I tell you that I made this decision out of principle and out of a duty to protect and defend the Constitution. I feel that in my bones, and I will stick to that regardless of what it does to me politically, because this is bigger than politics.
Wow. You see the contention in that room. Yes, some cheers, some boos, some other noises. Watching that are more than a dozen other House Democrats who have yet to announce their intentions. This group has something in common. Their districts, yes, went blue in the 2018 House races, but they also voted for President Trump back in 2016. There you see it, right there. Welcome to politics in America. The Congresswoman saying, I will vote yes. The Congresswoman also saying, I understand I might lose my job for voting yes.
And we saw a similar scene a couple of weeks ago with Mikey Sherrill from New Jersey, where she held a town hall and got a lot of pushback from people like questioning the legitimacy of the impeachment inquiry. This is a really dicey time for a lot of these people. A number of them are freshmen, members of Congress, and they really have something here to prove to their constituents. And a lot of their constituents are not on board with this impeachment, and so they're really having to juggle sort of the demands of their constituents with what they think is the plan.
And I want to give, as you jump in, I just want to give Congressman Slotkin some credit. Whether you agree with her or disagree with her, I don't live in her district, but she wrote an essay explaining herself. Then she did a public town hall. Mm-hmm. A lot of these members now in both parties are just, because the town halls do get contentious, because people do get up in your face. Because guess what? Your opponents organize and send people into the room. That's fair. This is America. It's politics. But it takes courage to go into a room and do that. And more politicians in both parties are just shying away from it because it is contentious. I'm sorry.
I mean, the political calculation, though, is that of the universe of people that would consider voting for someone like Congresswoman Slotkin, more of them are in favor of impeachment. The problem for her is that the Republicans who are opposed to impeaching the president, who see this as a sham situation, are very motivated by it to come out. And we saw that even in places Democrats won, in those Kentucky and Louisiana governor seats, that they won. It was tight, and they won a red state, and that's really hard for Democrats. But Democrats on the ground there argued that they won by less than they could have had impeachment not been happening, because impeachment was so motivating for the president's supporters. Now, look, the election is not tomorrow. I don't really remember what happened last week, so I suspect the voters don't either. So how big a thing this is once we get to November, we don't know, but we know that the president's certainly going to keep bringing it up.
Anybody who thinks they know is making it up, in the sense that I remember I was covering the White House in the 1998, 1999 Clinton impeachment. The Republicans were the prosecuting party, if you will. They lost 5 seats in a midterm election where they expected to gain seats. That was early, just before, as impeachment was playing out. Newt Gingrich ran ads against those Democrats using President Clinton's behavior. They lost 5 seats. Then Newt Gingrich lost his job as Speaker, and his heir apparent, Bob Livingston, lost his job when he was trying to come in. So don't predict the politics of impeachment. You wander the halls of the hills. I just want to put up here, there's 15 House Democrats we're waiting for. We're waiting to hear their decisions, and they will be very mindful of what they just heard from their Congresswoman. The ones that are faded there, there's 15 of them in all. I don't know if we can show all 15 first, if we can. And then when you fade them away, the ones you still see there are in districts that the president carried by 4 points or more. So it's a more risky decision. Now, they insist they're doing this on principle. They're not doing this on politics, but politicians are politicians.
Oh, yeah, of course that's part of the calculation. I mean, as of last Friday, the Democratic leadership was expecting between 2 and 6 defections. But you have to sort of wonder if what we saw happen over the weekend makes moderates sort of recalculate what they're going to do. You know, we saw Jeff Van Drew had to switch parties because his polling in his district with Democrats was so bad because he opposed impeachment, went on Fox News, blasted his own party. If they vote against this, I mean, you mentioned the base. There could be people that don't donate to their reelection campaigns, which are going to be very contentious. And so that also is risky, even if, you know, they wouldn't be repelling some independent voters. But I do think that a lot of moderates, and what I hear privately, is that they see this as a legacy vote. So if you're going to lose either way, why not just do what your conscience is telling you? Right. And for a lot of them, they feel like they want to vote for this.
But to your point, if you're a Democratic member from a swing district, you have to win most of your votes from Democrats. Yes, you got to reach out to independents. Yes, you're hoping to get a small percentage of Republicans, try to get some of them out there and try to build that over your career. But your base are the Democrats. This is why we saw over the weekend, Matt Cartwright in Pennsylvania. He says, I'm going to vote for impeachment. He says, we may well hear an innocent explanation when it gets over to the Senate, but he believes it's important enough to impeach and send it to a trial. Angie Craig in Minnesota, same vote if this were a Democratic president, trying to make the case she's doing this on principle. On the evidence, Chris Pappas in New Hampshire, the president of the United States, has brought this upon us. Tough choices.
Very tough, and that's what the White House is watching to see how they're responding to this, because they think that if they're vulnerable enough that they can convince them not to vote with it. And now if they stand by and say, this is our principle, we're going to vote our conscience here and say that he should be impeached, that's something that the Trump campaign doesn't want to see. That's why they've been polling impeachment in these districts, publishing that, making it clear how these voters feel about this, because they want to be able to pressure them, because essentially they want to get as many Democrats to vote against it as possible, which is why the Jeff Van Drew thing is so interesting. If he's going to switch to become a Republican before the vote, wouldn't it be better for the White House if he remains a Democrat, votes against impeachment, and then they can say, here's another Democrat who voted against this?
There's also 2 articles, and so a number of these Democrats could, presumably go for one and not the other, and so that kind of gives them an out to say, well, I basically used my discretion in terms of trying to decide which one,
But that vote count is crucially important, right? In the macro sort of narrative of how we're all going to look at this thing and how this is going to get translated down to voters in terms of who won and who lost in the politics, whether Democrats lose 2 votes or 6 votes matters a lot. I think there's a sense of impeachment fatigue a little bit among voters. There's a sense that the country knows how this is all going to play out. And maybe they do, but how it plays out matters a lot for the politics.
It's a great point. And Elissa Slotin, you saw the contentious town hall. She met with reporters on the way out, and she said she has not been whipped by Speaker Pelosi or anyone else in the leadership. No arm twisting to get her to vote either way. But the Democratic consultants, to your point, are also telling these candidates that, A, vote your conscience. B, if you have to make a tough political call, you need your own voters. And so you should probably stay with your party.
Your business idea needs a website?